People say it's perfect. Yeah.
People say it's perfect. Okay. That's, yeah. Ajahn Brahm said you should be satisfied with 70% anyway. So we said 70%. If it's perfect, then we are above what we're supposed to be. So that's great. So.
All right. And then you just have to check that it's in speaker view. Alrighty.
Okay.
Everybody's happy?
Is everyone happy?
Yeah, they seem to be happy.
Everyone is happy on this side. Is everyone happy on your side, Freddie?
Yeah, they comment is that's perfect.
Okay, marvelous.
So it's 8:50 now, so let's start. Okay. Hello everyone.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Day of Kindfulness with Ajahn Brahmali. I'm Freddie, the meeting host today, and together with me there is Jean, who is the co-host, and she will be helping with other technical side of Zoom as well. And before we start, I would like to give some reminders to everyone. First thing is, please keep the meeting ID and password to yourself only. And the second thing is, we suggest everyone to use the earphone or earplugs for better audio quality. Yeah, please use a working earphone, not like mine. And you will be muted at all times. There is a separate question form for submitting question to Ajahn. So please check the email we sent out earlier for the question form link. And please don't post your question in the chat box, as the question will be quickly pushed away by new messages. And to show respect to Ajahn and to facilitate communication, please change your name to your real name and switch on the camera showing your face during the course of the event. And to protect personal privacy, recording and screen capturing of the event is strictly prohibited. We will be recording the event and put it online later. And if you have any technical issue, please leave a message in the Zoom chat box or try to restart the Zoom application. And again, please do not put your questions to Ajahn in the chat box. And let me remind everyone of the timetable today again. So now it's 8:15, and after my intro, there will be the Dhamma Talk. And after that, at 9:15, there will be the guided meditation. And at 10:15, it will be the lunch time. So Ajahn will be off for lunch, and everyone should have their lunch time. And after that, it would be 1:30. It will be a self-meditation. So at that time, Ajahn will not be here, but the Zoom meeting room will be open for everyone if you want to meditate together. And Ajahn will come again at 2:30 for the Dhamma Talk. And after that, it will be followed by Q&A. And it should roughly ends at 4 p.m. And for any questions, please go to the question form again. And I think Jean is going to post the form link again in the chat box, or you can check the email we sent out earlier for the form link. Okay, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Ajahn, but in case you are not, let me give you an introduction about Ajahn Brahmali. So, born in Norway in 1964, Ajahn Brahmali became interested in Buddhism and meditation in his early 20s. Having completed degrees in engineering and finance, he became an anagarika, that is keeping the 8 precepts, in England at Amaravati and Chithurst Buddhist monasteries. After hearing Ajahn Brahm's teachings, Ajahn Brahmali went to Australia and trained at Bodhinyana Monastery in 1994. He was fully ordained in 1996 with Ajahn Brahm being his preceptor. Renowned for his knowledge of the Pali language and of the suttas, Bhikkhu Bodhi calls Ajahn Brahmali a major helper for his translation of the numerical discourse of the Buddha. Ajahn Brahmali has published essays on dependent origination and has co-authored a book with Ajahn Sujato called The Authenticity of Early Buddhist Texts. A highly sought after teacher in Australia, Europe, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka, he makes the teachings of the Buddha easily accessible to all. So that's all for me for now. It's time for Ajahn to give the talk. So welcome, Ajahn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Freddie. So hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. I see some familiar names there. I can only see a few of you on the screen. I can see Kelly and Daniel. I can see up there. Hello, Kelly and Daniel. And I cannot, I'm sure there's other people I know, but I cannot remember your names, but never mind. It's good to see everyone there and to be able to, it's nice to be able to have a Dhamma discourse, even though we can't travel very much these days. It's wonderful to be able to use technology in this way. It's great to see you all here. And what is fascinating, it's actually very interesting, this whole situation in the world right now with situation, all of these things, because it just reminds you of some of the very central teachings of the Buddha. And whenever you are reminded of the central teachings of the Buddha, it leads you towards the Dhamma. It leads you towards, we're talking about kindfulness today, and it leads you towards mindfulness, which is the recollection of the teachings, also the clarity of seeing things clearly. And it also leads you towards kindness at the same time, because all of these things are really related to each other. So it is. So we should never underestimate the power of difficulties. When we have difficulties in life, and if we deal with those difficulties in a wise and skillful way, actually it turns out to be a blessing in disguise. We often have the idea in English of the cloud having a silver lining, but actually it's more like the silver lining is very large in this case. So the silver lining is larger than the cloud, because if the cloud can help you to move you towards Dhamma, then actually all you have at the end of the day is the silver, and the cloud actually disappears. So it turns out to be something very positive indeed. So what happens if we use the troubles in the world, and the world seems to be a very troubled place right now? I know you had your fair share of troubles in Hong Kong, and it's not just in Hong Kong, but in the United States, they're having all kinds of serious issues. And it's not just there. It seems to be happening all over the place. And on top of all the political problems around the world, we have all the climate change problems. The COVID situation seems to be one of the small things. Yeah, it's one of the tiny things. In the big picture, there are other things that are even worse than the COVID situation. And so the question always is then, how do we deal with this in a skillful way? That is what really matters. And if we deal with these things in a skillful way, then we can see how the dukkha, the problems in the world, they actually lead to wisdom. Yeah, dukkha leads you to wisdom because you start to understand the nature of reality. And it's interesting, the word COVID, there is a Pali word called covido. You know that? There's a Pali word called covido. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's almost like COVID. Is it put an O on the end, and you have covido, you have a Pali word. And the Pali word covido means like wise. Yeah, it means like intelligent or wise, someone who has insight into things. And the word covido is often used of the people who are the noble ones, the Aryas. They are called covido. So we are moving from COVID to covido. That's what we're trying to do. We're moving from COVID, just add an O on the end and you get covido. Moving from dukkha to understanding, to insight. This should be the idea here. And we have a novice, we have an agarika in the monastery, and he is about to ordain. He asked for ordination just the other day. And I told him, you should take the name covido. It's obvious, yeah? And that name covido will remind you for the rest of your life that when you ordained, there was the COVID situation, the problem of COVID there, and it will always inspire you to remember the dukkha that existed at that time, to then bring that into your life, to remind yourself of the problems, and then that will actually lead to a sense of understanding and intelligence about the reality, the nature of reality. So there's great benefits of having difficulties. If we deal with the difficulties in the right way, we don't become silly, we don't become stupid about things, then it's going to be very, very beneficial for us. And it leads to more understanding of the Buddhist teachings. It leads to more kindness, more gentleness. It leads to more compassion for the people around the world. Everyone is suffering the same way because of these problems. It's a universal thing. It happens around the world. And it leads to all of these positive things coming out of it if we deal with these things in the right way. There is a story that I have been telling recently. It's a story of, this was a Norwegian fellow who wrote a book soon after the Second World War. You know, the Second World War was one of the most kind of devastating things in international history. And it was certainly very devastating in Europe. In Europe, there were tens of millions of people who died during the Second World War. It was a very difficult time, obviously. And so it was really bad. Of course, Norway, which is where I come from originally, was one of those countries that was invaded by the Germans. So it was very difficult in Norway as well, even though it wasn't as bad in Norway as many other places, because we were kind of on the periphery of where things were happening. Still, it was a good time. And then there was this man, and he wrote this book soon after the Second World War. And he said in this book that the strange thing about the Second World War, even though it was a time of great difficulty, it was a time of great suffering for the population and all of these things, he said very strangely, it was also a time of happiness. And this is kind of one of those weird things in the middle of some of the great sufferings that are imaginable to human beings. War, devastation, family members being killed, perhaps, bombs being dropped. You never know whether you're going to wake up in the morning or not. All of these things. Yet, at that time, he said, was one of the greatest times of happiness, at least for him personally, and also for many other people as well, during that very difficult period. And this is one of those paradoxes of life. Sometimes we see things that are really terrible, and somehow they turn out to be far less bad than actually what we had expected. And he explained this, and he said the reason why this was the case was because during the Second World War, there was a sense of friendship, a sense of having something to fight for, something. The Nazi regime was considered very bad, obviously, and it was exterminating large numbers of people. There was a sense of common purpose, people coming together, a sense of friendship developing, and then trying to defeat this terrible ideology that had arisen in Europe, in Germany in particular, at that particular time. And that sense of camaraderie, of friendship, of common purpose, it actually gave rise to something very positive, a feeling of positive feelings inside her. And not only did it have a positive impact on the people who were occupied by the Germans, like the Norwegians, by coming together, by acting together in a positive way, but it also had a positive impact even on the enemy, even the Germans, who didn't really hate them so much. You understood that they too were blinded by ideology, blinded, not seeing the world in the right way, and for that reason doing things that was negative and nasty for people around the world. So very fascinating how in the middle of great suffering, actually you can find happiness. Why is that? What is the reason why suddenly you find happiness in such very difficult times? And there is at least two reasons for that. And one is that when things change and things are impermanent and they move towards something difficult, actually the reality is often not as bad as we think it is. We adjust to the new situation. We change. It's actually the time of change itself which is difficult when we see the change happening because we are attaching to our current situation. But once we get there, we are actually able to adapt. And you see this with people in general in life. If you have a friend who passes away, you have a family member who passes away, and we have all been there, we've all been through those things, or you lose something in your life, and it may be very, very difficult for a certain time. And then at the other end, gradually, the cloud of darkness, the cloud of depression, the cloud of negative feeling, it starts to lift. And then before you know it, you come out of it, and then the suffering has disappeared in the background, and you have adjusted to the new situation instead, and you're able to find new meaning in life, new purpose, and then it carries on. It is the same self which is hard, but very often we are able to adjust to the new situation. So this doesn't mean that impermanence is not a problem. Yeah, obviously it is a problem because we are always holding on to things. It is always very hard. But actually, it is often not as difficult as it seems, because we come out of things and we find a new purpose, new meaning in the new situation. But the other thing which is interesting about this thing that happened in Europe and in Norway during the Second World War is this idea that how can people actually be happy here? Yeah, when things are so difficult. On the one hand, there obviously is an enormous amount of suffering. Yeah, purely from a rational point of view, everyone really going through a time. All the material goods that you are used to are gone. Yeah, during the war, it's very difficult to you know the food you get is very basic. You have to kind of get it from your own country. The whole import system comes to a stop because of the international trade doesn't really work anymore. And so all the ordinary comforts of life are gone. And perhaps your house gets bombed. Yeah, so you don't really have a house. You have to live somewhere else. Everything is very simple. And so what happens? The way that happiness arises at that time is precisely because you understand the limitations of the world. You understand that the outside world that we normally rely on for so much happiness, yeah, the food you get, the nice coming to, one of the highlights of coming to Hong Kong is coming there and eat some of the famous Hong Kong food. Yeah? So this is one of the reasons I really regret not coming to Hong Kong this year, because I can't get any of those, nice Hong Kong food when I get taken out, which is very, very beautiful. But this is how we normally live. And suddenly you can't have that anymore. You can't have those things. You have to turn for your happiness and the meaning somewhere else. And where do we turn? We turn inwards. We turn to the mental qualities. We turn to the spiritual world instead. And that is where we find meaning and where we find happiness. And this is what happened in Norway. People were turning away from the external world, and they were turning instead to the feeling of comradeship, of being friendly with each other, working together, working in harmony together, trusting each other. Yeah, all of these, which are inner qualities of the heart, not the outer qualities of the world. And that was one of those powerful lessons from that time, which was so difficult. And this is a lesson we should really take into the world now. When things are difficult, the right thing to do is to turn inwards instead, to look for the inner qualities. And that is where we can find a degree of security, a degree of refuge. And that is actually something that always works in time of difficulty. So we shouldn't waste this opportunity. We shouldn't think that this is just a difficult time in history, a difficult time for Hong Kong, a difficult time around the world. Instead, we should use it to change our direction a little bit and understand where the real refuge is to be found. It is not to be found in the world. The world is inherently unreliable. What we are seeing now is no aberration. It is not something which is unusual. It's not that it shouldn't be like this. It should be like this. This is the reality of things. And once we get that, we turn in a different direction instead, and we turn inwards. So you can see here, this is why the Buddha, why he emphasized the idea of impermanence, the idea of anicca so much, the idea that the world is so unreliable, so uncertain. We never know where it's going to go next. We never know whether, what is going to happen around the corner. And this is a big, big problem for humanity and for every one of us. And this is why the Buddha, again and again, he emphasized this. And you may remember that, those of you who remember the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, this is the last sutta about the final days of the Buddha. This is when the Buddha is traveling through India on his very last trip. And during this very last trip, the very last thing that the Buddha says to his disciples, can you remember that? The very last thing? The very last thing he says is, in the Pali language, is Vaya Dhamma Sankara Apamadena Sampadeta. Yeah, Vaya Dhamma Sankara is almost like, this is the last thing he says. And of course, the last thing he says must be something very significant, yeah? Otherwise, he wouldn't say it as the last thing. This can be taken as a summary of the entire Buddhist teachings. So what is that summary? And that summary is Vaya Dhamma. Vaya means like having the nature to come to an end, having the nature to cease. Yeah. In other words, everything is impermanent. Sankhara is all phenomena in the world. All phenomena in the world have this nature to be impermanent, to be unreliable. Yeah. And this is the very last teaching of the Buddha. So it must mean that what he is doing here is summarizing what he was teaching for 45 years in these 2 words, Vaya Dhamma Sankhara. And then it says Apamadena Sampadeta, which means just, strive on with diligence or strive on with carefulness or heedfulness based on that summary of his teaching. So very significant. So when we see the world looking fragile, looking uncertain, not knowing what's going to happen next, we shouldn't be surprised. We should expect this because this is the nature of reality. This is exactly what the Buddha was warning against. Yeah? And the more we understand this, the more we use this as a reminder, the more we turn inwards and we turn towards the Buddhist path instead. And this was one of the other things that happened during the Second World War, which was very fascinating as well. And that was, after the war was over, everyone was so happy, yeah, and the suffering had so great during those years that everyone was saying afterwards, never again do we want to do this. Yeah, this has been so bad, so terrible, so much destruction, such a terrible time. Never again do we want to do this. And yet, yeah, so because of that, the first few years in Europe was very peaceful, was a very peaceful time in European history. People were fed up of war. They were fed up of arguing with each other, fed up of ideological differences. Yeah, I am right, you are wrong. This is the right way of running society, and we're going to kill you unless you agree with us, and this kind of stuff. People were so fed up of that, yeah. They realized this doesn't work. Yeah? And so it was a very peaceful time. The European Union was established to avoid future wars in Europe and all of these kind of things that was happening here. But gradually, we forget. Gradually, the memory of the Second World War fades into the background. We can no longer remember. I mean, I was born a long time, 2 decades, 1964, 2 decades after the end of the Second World War. So I have no real memory at all. I had to talk to my grandparents, really. Even my parents were children, small children during the Second World War. So gradually the memory fades from our collective memory. And gradually it disappears into the background. And as the memory fades, the old problems re-arise again in society. Again, we become more antagonistic. Again, we start to shout at each other. Again, we start to tell others what they should be doing. Again, start to threaten other people with war and all of these negative things. Why? Because we forget the horrors of war. We forget how bad it actually is. And that is why we go in the wrong direction. So this is why the Buddha reminds us of Vaya Dhamma Sankhara. He reminds us of Vaya Dhamma Sankhara because he knows that we tend to forget these things. He knows that we, sooner or later, we forget the very fundamental lessons of life. And then we lose our morality. We become aggressive with each other. We lose our sense of passion and kindness for each other. And we start to become the opposite. We become much worse as human beings. So this is one of those very important things again, this memory, reminding ourselves of the real problems in life, reminding ourselves the nature of the world. Yeah, we have a tendency to think that the way things are now is the way that will carry on. Yeah, and that's why we are shocked when there is impermanence. That's why we are shocked when you have instability in Hong Kong. That's why you're shocked when you have political instability around the world. That's why you're shocked when climate change seems to be turning society upside down, and who knows what's going to happen as a consequence. But to stop that shock, we should remind ourselves of the problem, of the unreliability of the world, and then we turn in a different direction instead. And so this is the beginning of wisdom. COVID turned into COVID. Remember that, COVID becoming COVID though. It's quite a handy little saying here. COVID means wisdom. And so as we do that, and as we remember the problems of the world, what happens is that we start to think about things in a different way. We start to think about people in a different way. We understand the importance of looking after each other because we understand the fragility of the situation we are in. Things can change so fast. Now is the opportunity to be kind. Now is the opportunity to do the right thing. We don't know if we have the opportunity again in the future. And remember the tragedy of impermanence, of unavailability, how quickly things can change and how much suffering it brings about. We start to have more compassion for people. Yeah, we understand that everyone in the world goes through these problems. We understand that everyone has the same problems as we have, with family members dying and becoming sick, with the societies collapsing, with change happening around us. And then compassion starts to grow for the common problem that we have as human beings, not just human beings, animals too, yeah, ghosts as well. We have more compassion for the ghosts. Have you all got compassion for the ghosts? This is a nice way of not being afraid of the ghost. Yeah, you cannot be afraid and have compassion at the same time. But ghosts, of course, they have exactly the same problem as we have. So you have compassion for the ghosts, and you have compassion and kindness for everyone. Yeah, everyone in the whole world as a consequence of this. One of the most difficult people to have compassion and kindness towards are those people we regard as the perpetrators. People who actually do the bad acts. Yeah, sometimes we feel that there are certain people who are bad. Yeah, they do bad things. They go out and they are violent and they do all these kind of things. So one of the very important lessons in Buddhism is to find out how do we deal with people who are really, really difficult. This is one of the teachings I give every day when I do this day of kindfulness in Hong Kong, usually, because it's such an important teaching. Yeah? And if we can deal with those people who are the most difficult, then we can pretty much deal with everyone else in our life. So I will start to talk about that, and then I will talk more about how to act with kindness in more general terms in our life. So how can we deal with the people that we regard as the crooks in the world, the criminals, the of violence, the bad people? You maybe watch TV and maybe some politicians really upset you. You think, oh, they are really bad, they're doing things in this way. Or maybe some other people you think are doing bad things. And then so how can we have compassion for these people as well? And it's such an important point, because once you can have compassion for everyone in the world, yeah, many people don't like Donald Trump these days, but if you can compassion even for Donald Trump, wow, then you're really in business, yeah? Because these are some of the most difficult people. If you can have compassion for Hitler, yeah, some of these bad people in history, yeah, then you are really in business in terms of spiritual qualities. And one of the beautiful ways that the Buddha teaches about this, and this is one of the discourses that he gives in the numerical discourses, where he talks first about loving kindness, yeah, how to have loving kindness for people. It talks about the people who are bad. What do you do if you cannot see any good qualities in someone? What do you do if all you can see is the bad qualities? Well, if you can only see bad qualities, you cannot really have loving kindness, because loving kindness is based on the idea of seeing good qualities in another person. So if you cannot see good qualities, then you have to have another strategy, and that is the strategy of compassion. And the Buddha gives a beautiful simile here, the simile of a person who is walking in the wilderness somewhere. He's walking between two villages, yeah, and there's no one around, there's no food, there's no drink, there is no medicine. And while this person is walking between these two villages, he falls ill, he becomes sick. Yeah, and he falls into this terrible illness. But again, there's no village, there's no people around, there's no food, there's no medicine, there's no water, there's no doctor, there's nothing. What is your feeling for a person like that who suddenly becomes sick in the middle of nowhere? And the natural human feeling to have when you see someone who is really sick, and it is not their fault, because sickness usually is not our fault. It just happens to our bodies, because you have a body, you get sick sometimes. The natural human reaction to that is to have compassion for the person. Yeah, you can see that they are suffering for no fault of their own, and they cannot deal with that suffering in a good way. So you have compassion for them. And when you see this poor person walking, yeah, wish them well, and you think, oh, maybe you see it from afar, you can't really help straight away. You think, may you find medicine, may you get a doctor, may you get someone to help you. And if you have the opportunity, you will rush to her and you will help them. Why? Because you know the person is in a very difficult state. When we see suffering in the world, for no reason, when we see children in certain places living in poverty and dying at a very young age because they haven't got the doctors that we have in the richer part of the world, like you have in Hong Kong or Australia, when you see people suffering these terrible injustices, that was very hard to explain why these things happen. Natural sense of compassion arises. You want to help out, because it is not these people's fault. And the interesting thing that the Buddha says here is that we should regard the bad people in the world, we should regard them as a sick person. If someone is bad, if someone does something wrong, they are sick because they are mentally distorted. It's a mental kind of illness if you do bad things. It means you don't really understand what is in your own best interest. You do bad things, but the person who gets the worst result out of doing bad things, not the people around that person, it is actually themselves. They are destroying their own future by doing bad things. So if you see someone being violent, if you see someone saying bad things to other people, if you see someone acting in the wrong way, they are destroying their own future. They are destroying their own happiness. They are destroying whatever, leads to anything positive in this world. And when you understand that this person, they're hurting themselves, just like the person at the side of the road, lying down, not finding a doctor, then compassion can start to arise because you understand this is a person in darkness. This is a person who is deluded. This is a person who does not know how to look after themselves or how to look after the world around them. And this becomes a very powerful reflection when you do this in the right way. And it's also quite an easy reflection to do when you look at this in the world. You understand how we are all like robots. We're all programmed. We all walk around in society. We are influenced by the world around us. Because we are influenced by the world around us, we do things in certain ways without really being in charge of our own lives. So people who do bad things, they are just conditioned to do those bad things. And it's actually very hard for them to step back and to understand that what they're doing is bad. Actually, it is very often impossible for people to do that because the conditioning is so powerful. And this is the idea of non-self, that we are not in charge. What is in charge is the conditioning. That is what really is the problem. That is what actually runs us. And when you understand that people do things because of conditioning, they do things because of all of these things coming together from the past life, things happening in this life, and now they are acting on that program. A program that was written sometimes in the past, laid down in their mind, into the tracks of the mind, and now they are just following along that program. This is who we are. We are people who follow this program that was written. Now the code of program and following along that program without really realizing it ourselves. And then we are trapped by our personalities, trapped by our conditioning, and then we live out all the stupid things that our conditioning does to us. So if in the past we have developed bad qualities such as anger, such as jealousy, such as strong greed and all of these kind of things, and these things are found in our heart, then given the right situation, these things will come out and they will affect themselves in society, and we will act these things out without really having any say about it because we are following the program that is laid down inside of us. If you see people like that, you can start to have passion because you understand they are living to their own detriment, not because they really want to, but because they don't understand that they are following this program inside of them. It becomes almost like a bit despairing when you look at the world like that. But it also gives you a chance to have compassion for the world. And it gives you an idea why the Buddhist teachings, why spiritual teachings in general are so important in the world, because the spiritual teachings are what enables people to come out of that conditioning. Yeah, because it is a new kind of conditioning. It is the opposite conditioning from the conditioning we normally have. And it reminds you, wait a minute, maybe I should be kind. Maybe being violent is not such a good idea. Maybe, killing other people, maybe it's best not to do that. Yeah, and this is what the spiritual teachings are about. They turn you around. They give you a counter conditioning, which allows you to come out of that robotic mode by you are just following your defilements and following your stupidity. This is the beautiful thing about the spiritual teachings. So remember this, and then you also start to understand the danger in your own life as well. It's not just about compassion for others because other people are trapped in this world by the conditioning, but every one of us is trapped in our conditioning. Yeah, this is just the real thing. We're trapped, if you like, in our personalities. It's kind of weird, isn't it, to be trapped in your personality, because it doesn't feel like that. Yeah, here I am. Yeah, this is my personality. Whoa. And I'm going to use it. I'm going to go into the world, and I'm going to do stuff, and I'm going to, and I'm the agent. I'm going to use all these qualities inside of me to do good things in the world. And it's the me, the I, that does that. But actually, that is just a delusion. There isn't really any I behind this. There is no essence behind this that actually decides and makes the world go round. It is just conditioning. And the I is like a superficial layer that is laid on top of that. And that often comes afterwards. Yeah, the conditioning comes first. And then the I is a layer on top of the conditioning. And we are reacting, we are living the conditioning, and we are not really, the I is just an illusion on top of that. We feel like we're autonomous agents and we are acting in the world. But actually, is actually the problem that we feel that, because it gives us a part of this delusion. And when we see this, the more deeply we see this, we also change our own attitude towards ourselves. We become a little bit afraid of our own moments. Yeah, when you watch TV, maybe you look, or you read about the news somewhere. I don't know where you get your information about the world, but wherever that is, and perhaps you feel a bit upset about the events in the world. And it would be almost superhuman not to get a little bit upset sometimes, because some of these events are quite disturbing when you see them. But when you see that, and you see that you get upset, then you know your inner conditioning is coming out. Yeah, and unless you deal with your own inner conditioning in this life, you will carry that conditioning with you into the future. This is the deep-seated conditioning inside one of us. Isn't that a bit frightening? Yeah, because you are carrying that conditioning with you in your next life. Where are you going to be? Yeah, let's say that you get reborn in your next life, and there is no really good spiritual teaching around. There may be no Buddhism around anymore. There may not be any other good spiritual teachings. And then maybe you grow up in a family or a society where those bad qualities are encouraged. Yeah, where those bad qualities are being used by the forces that are larger than us. This is one of the problems with society. They often use and abuse those bad qualities inside of us, and then they make us do things that is against our own interest. And that is kind of scary. So now is our chance to deal with those bad inequalities. Now is our chance to actually change our attitude. If you don't do it now, you will carry it with you into the future. That is a cause for concern. It's not, I don't want to frighten anyone. I don't want to frighten myself either. But, it's just a matter of understand that, and then we have more motivation to do something about these things. If we don't understand the danger, there's no motivation to actually deal with these issues. So we look at other people and we understand that they need compassion. We look at ourselves. We need compassion too, and we need to try to change our attitude so that we don't carry these defilements with you into the future. And then when you look at the big picture of the world, you look at the people that you may find upsetting the world, that are really kind of big, the Pol Pots that kill millions of people, or whoever it is, and you start to understand that they too are just like robots. They too are carrying out this program. You can start to have compassion for not just for the victims, but also the perpetrators of these large crimes. It's almost as if we're all blindly moving on, and then we kill each other, everyone being blind, no one really knowing what they're doing, and causing more trouble, causing all this suffering in the world as a consequence. This is then a powerful cause for compassion in our society here. So if you can do that, if you can have compassion for everyone in this way, or at least you can move a little bit towards that ideal, then wow, you have done so much in your life. And you will almost, you may still get upset every now and again, but you will quickly bring yourself back to this idea of compassion, understanding that no one is really in charge. No one really understands what they're doing here. And when no one understands what they're doing, no one is in charge, then compassion is the only right response in the world. But so that is a little bit about dealing with some of the root problems, in the human mind, and how we can deal with those things. I want to take it a bit further, because this is really only the beginning. I mean, it's very important to deal with these issues, but we need more information, I think, also on how to live, not just to have compassion, but also to have more kindness in our lives. How can we actually be more kind in general? Of course, compassion is a very good start. If you have compassion, then the kindness has to come out of that compassion. But also we need to apply this compassion in the right way. How can we apply the compassion in the right way in our daily life, in our interaction with people? When I meet with you all now, how can I deal with you with compassion? How can you deal with me with compassion? How can we treat each other well in a nice way? How can we do this? And remember that some of the very simple ways that the Buddha teaches about kindness in the world, a lot of them are about everyday things, how we deal with things in the ordinary life on an everyday basis. And if we can turn our everyday life into paths of spirituality, paths of practice, paths of kindness, then we are doing incredibly well. The opportunities to be kind are almost endless. Every time we do an act, every time you open your mouth to say something, every time you think a thought, you have an opportunity to be kind. You can either be kind, you can be not kind, or you can be neutral. Most of the time we are just neutral. But if we take every one of these opportunities to live with kindness and to live the spiritual path, it becomes extraordinarily powerful. That is when things really start to happen. So how can we do this in practice? And one of the ways of doing this is to take the example of speech. We speak a lot during a day. We interact a lot with the people. So how can we use our speech in such a way that it becomes a blessing rather than the curse that it sometimes is in our society? You know how painful it can be, when someone speaks to you in the wrong way. They use harsh words or harsh language, or maybe they put you down or say something negative. It can be very painful. Speech is extraordinarily powerful. It can really hurt us. But on the other hand, although it can really hurt us, there is the opposite side of the coin. If we can really hurt people with speech, we can also lift people up through our speech. If we speak in the right way, if we speak with kindness, if we speak speech that goes to the heart of people, it has the exact opposite effect. It lifts people up. It makes people feel happy. It makes people feel valued. It makes other people's day. By saying kind words to them. One kind word. My friend here, my dear colleague. I want you to know, I never told you before, but I really value you as a colleague. It's wonderful to be working with you for all these years. What a marvelous thing it is to have a colleague like you. What a marvelous thing, Freddie, it is to have a colleague like you. I don't, because we are like colleagues. We're working together on this. It is wonderful to have such kind people as colleagues in the world. So we appreciate each other in this way. We say things that go to people's hearts, and we use this power of speech to give other people the gift of our speech. So remember that every time you open your mouth, you have the opportunity to give other people a gift. Yeah, you can speak in a way that is gentle, that is caring, that is sustaining, that is gives a positive message to other people, that lifts them up, gives them something extra, and the other person will feel good because of that. And it is in our power to give people this gift. Every time you open your mouth, you can give someone a gift. Isn't it marvelous to be able to give someone a gift? Isn't that one of the things we really love to do? And isn't it a wonderful thing to be able to make other people happy in this way? It's such a beautiful thing. And even the people that we find difficult in our life, remember to have compassion on them. And the moment you have compassion on the difficult people, because they do bad things or say bad things, you can even give a gift to compassionate people. You can say to them, actually, I really value these things in you. You're not claiming a difficult side, but you see the good sides of the person. I value these things in you, and you give them your kindness and your gentleness, even though they might be difficult to you. You change your mind state, and then you go into the world and you share all of these positive things with the people around you. It is so marvelous when we turn the spiritual path and we bring it into our daily life, and everything becomes spiritual. Everything becomes part of our mental development. It becomes something very, very powerful when we do that. And that is when the spiritual path really starts to work. We need to, as far as we are able, we need to remember the spiritual practice moment to moment, day in, day out, and carry it on all the time. That is when it becomes very, very powerful. And the Buddha specifically mentioned speech as one of those powerful areas where we can make a difference, but really can change things and become something positive. And of course, it's not just speech. It's also, these things can also be done through bodily actions, by being kind to others, by gestures of kindness. And there's endless opportunities to do little acts of kindness in ordinary life, little gestures where we show that we do a service for somebody. And one of the fascinating things that I find, with someone like Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm is obviously our teacher, my teacher, and all teachers of all the monks down in the monastery here in Serpentine. And yet Ajahn Brahm, he always leads by example. He's always kind to everyone. And Ajahn Brahm, he will help you. If he sees an opportunity to help you, he will do that. He will hold the door open to the most junior monk in the monastery here. And then he will kind of give you something, hand you something here. And he is actually a very humble person, someone like Ajahn Brahm. And this is what you see with anyone who is very spiritually developed. They're actually very, very humble. And there's no sense of hierarchy. I am too good to be kind to someone who is lower down in the hierarchy. There's nothing like that. You're kind to everyone, even though they are in a lower position than you. You have the humility to be kind, even to the most ordinary people in the world. And Ajahn Brahm is a beautiful example of that. Always kind to the most simple people. Another beautiful story of that, which you may have heard, is a story from the Suttas where Venerable Sariputta, he was the Buddha's right-hand man. And the Buddha said that if anyone should carry on with the teachings, if I can't carry on, it is Venerable Sariputta who should carry on rolling the wheel of the Dhamma in the world. But even though Venerable Sariputta was the wisest person after the Buddha in the Sangha, he was also very humble. And there was one occasion in particular when he was walking along, and he was walking, there was a novice there. Here is one of the greatest arahants in Buddhist history. A person of tremendous spiritual power, of very profound meditation. And he walks past this novice, and a novice would maybe be a little child, maybe not a child, maybe a youth, I don't know how old the novice was, 12 years old, 15 years old maybe. And then Venerable Sariputta comes past, and then this novice says to Venerable Sariputta, he says, "Oh, your robe isn't on properly." And what does Venerable Sariputta do? What do you think he does? Does he tell the novice that is none of your business? Which maybe that would be true. It is none of the novice's business. But no, what happens then, of course, is that Venerable Sariputta, he looks down and he sees that his robe isn't properly on. It's maybe falling off a little bit or something. So he then goes behind the bush or something, and then he kind of adjusts his robes, puts it on properly, and then he comes out. And then he says to the novice, yeah, this tiny little monk, and he's the greatest arrow, one of the greatest arrow hands in history, and he says to the novice, thank you, teacher. Thank you for pointing out, a flaw. And then he carries on and he walks on where he's going here. And this is such a beautiful attitude, the attitude that we are humble about things, and we don't kind of get over the top. And then we're actually increasing even more the opportunities to be kind in the world because we don't see ourselves as above anything here. We're not beyond anything. And we are all part of this, part and parcel of this thing here, all working together here. And it becomes a marvelous thing when we do it that way here. So these are just some hints about how to be kind. And they're very simple hints. And I'm sure you all know about these things already. But we need to be reminded. We need to be reminded because even though they are simple, in ordinary life, when these things, when the ordinary things of the world happen, we forget these things. It is so difficult to remember what is, the Dhamma when we get very busy and things are happening in our lives. I really would recommend you to come back to these teachings of the Buddha again and again and again, as much as you can, because these are the things that allow you to live in the right way and live in the appropriate way. And then when you do that, I should also talk about one of the other similes of the Buddha. So you are already acting with kindness, but to enable you to do this, to act with kindness in the world, one of the importance is to be able to have that metta also to the world. I've talked about compassion already, how to be able to have compassion. But what about metta side of things then? Now, one of the interesting things about metta is that actually it is very important to be able to develop the metta, because the metta is a very positive feeling here. When you see things through the eyes of the metta, you're actually seeing the world in a very happy way. If you have compassion, it can sometimes be a bit sad, because compassion is the focusing on suffering of people, and then you want to help people out. But metta is the focus on the good qualities of people. And when we focus on the good qualities in people, actually, it is never sad. It's always a very positive feeling here. So I would really recommend you to also develop the metta side of things. It's a very, very important part. And I will talk more about this later on this afternoon when we meet again here. So how can we do this? How can we have metta in the world when we also see so many bad qualities around us? And one of the beautiful similes of the Buddha that he used in the suttas, and this is the simile of the rag-robed monk. I wish I could be an example. I can have a rag robe. I haven't got a rag robe, unfortunately, but it's quite common to see in Asia. You sometimes see rag robe monks. Actually, when I was a young monk, I had a rag robe. It was just all rags, very colorful. Eventually, there was nothing left of the original robe. Everything was just rags hanging together, and it's quite nice to live like that as a monk. You take your clothes so seriously, or your robe so seriously. But what the Buddha was saying, he was saying it's just like a rag robe monk, or maybe a rag robe nun. When you walk along the roadside and you see a rag on the roadside, what do you do? Well, because you have a rag robe, you're very happy to see a rag, because you think this might be a patch for the future I can use. So the monk or the nun, you take that rag and you stretch it out in front of you. You can pull it out. And then when you pull it out, you can see what is there. And then when you see what is there, you tear off the bad parts that cannot be used because they are rotten or they are too dirty or whatever. And you throw out the bad part. And then you take the good part, the thing that is actually left, and you carry that with you. And then when you need another patch for your rag robe, then you sew it as later on down the track sometime. And the way to be with people is just like that. The way to have metta for the people in the world is in the same way. I think spreading out the cloth is like looking at the whole person, and to remind us that people are complicated. people have bad qualities, they have good qualities, they have neutral qualities. So we spread out the person in front of us, and we look at all the qualities they have. Yeah, and when you look at all those qualities, you will see that there are some bad ones. What do you do with the bad ones? You tear them off, like you tear off the bad part of the cloth, and then you throw them in the rubbish. Yeah, and you throw them out, and then you take the good qualities. And the good qualities that remain when you look at that person, you take them with you. You take them into your heart, and you carry that into the future. So when it comes to your kalyana mittas, your good spiritual friends, yeah, wherever it is that you are, with the BIF or whatever it is that you are, whatever is your spiritual community, remember that the people around you that are part of your spiritual community have a very large part of cloth that is beautiful and intact. And there may be a small part of the cloth that is a little bit dirty and stained, a little bit rotten on the side, yeah? But remember to focus on the big part. Remember that these people that you are hanging out with, yeah, whether it is the monastics or whether it is the lay people in the world who practice the 8 precepts, who try to live spiritual life, that actually these are people who really want to do what is good in the world. And what a wonderful thing it is to be around that kind of people. It is marvelous. So honor that in people around you. Honor that good intention, that good quality is often there under the surface. And remember to look aside from those small defects that everyone has in this world and remember the big picture. The big picture is what matters. And when you do that, it will enable you to have metta for the people around you, your spiritual friends, whether they are monastics or lay people, or whoever they are. It will allow you to have metta because you look at the big picture instead of focusing on those small, niggly things that sometimes are problematic and sometimes make life difficult for us. And this is so important, yeah, because it's so easy in life to focus on the small issues, and we forget the big picture. We forget that actually there is an enormous amount of good qualities there. I do this actively in my monastic life. I always think about my fellow monastics. And of course, when you live closely with someone, like you do with your fellow monks, then it is quite easy. Yeah, you see the negative sides and you see the good sides and you see all of that. But you also know that if someone becomes a monk, if someone becomes a nun, if someone is a lay person who comes to the monastery regularly, you know that there are really good qualities there deep down. They have the right intention. They want to live well. Some of them have developed themselves to a very, very high degree here. And what a marvelous thing that is to have such people in the world. People who want to do what is right, who are leaning in the right direction. So you honor that, you focus on that, and you throw out the idea of the bad qualities, and you build up the perception of all the good qualities. And when you do that, then you have much more metta in your life because you're focusing on the good. And again, I'm going to come to an end very soon now. It's almost been going on for an hour. But again, Ajahn Brahm is one of my favorite people in that regard. He's always so positive. He always sees the best in everyone, and he never focuses on the negative. And that is because of that quality of metta, which is so powerful in someone like Ajahn Brahm. And I have learned so much from people like Ajahn Brahm in understanding how to direct your attention in the right way so as to focus on the positive things and letting go of that rubbish, that stuff which we are all conditioned with but don't really have any value. And we look aside from all of that. So there you are, just to summarize very briefly here, because I think it is important to bring out maybe the important elements in this. Remember that in times of difficulty are times to remind us of the importance of the spiritual life, because it reminds us of the unreliability of the external world. And when you remember the importance of the spiritual life, and when we keep that in mind, actually, it is a marvelous opportunity to develop ourselves in the right direction. So sometimes the difficult times in life, they are this cloud. It's not really a cloud with a silver lining. It is a silver cloud with a little bit of a gray lining around it. The majority of it, if you use it in the right way, can become incredibly positive. and a force for good in our life. So please deal with these things in the right way, and it becomes a blessing for every one of us. Okay, so that is my little talk for this morning. I've been going on for almost exactly 1 hour. So now do some meditation together, Freddie, yeah? So let's do some meditation together for about an hour or so, and so see how it goes. Okay, everyone. So always at the start of a meditation, just make sure that you take a lot of time to be comfortable and to be at ease and to relax. This is so important to get that foundation for your meditation. So have a nice posture. Don't try to be a meditation superstar, but find a posture that is just right for yourself so that you can relax. You can enjoy the meditation. You don't have too many pains and too many discomforts. The idea is to get rid of the body, to allow the body to fade into the background. And the only way you can do that is if the body is at ease, the body is relaxed. You have compassion for the body. You don't torture yourself, but you are kind to yourself instead. One of the most difficult things with meditation is to learn not to do the meditation, but allow the meditation to happen by itself. And one of the ways of learning not to do the meditation is to imagine that you come home after a long day at work. Maybe you're probably very tired because you've been concentrating and trying very hard to do your duties at work. And when you come back home and you sit down and you just relax, what do? And the answer is that you don't do anything. You just allow the mind to run. You allow the mind to do what it wants because you are tired. You don't want to control anymore. And in a way, the meditation should be the same. It should be a relaxation. We allow the mind to go. We don't force the mind in one way or another. First, it watch the breath. And when you allow the mind to go, then gradually it tends to settle down by itself. And this is, in a sense, the right way. And there is no effort, forcing of the mind, but allowing things to arise all automatically. And as you just sit back and allow things to unfold by themselves, all you really have to do is to very gently remind yourself and incline your mind towards peace. To remember that there is no real satisfaction to be found in that world. The world is always in turmoil. There's endless problems that have to be sorted out. Move away from that. Move instead towards that peace. Remind yourself where real peace, real happiness is to be found. It is to be found within when we let go of the world outside. So allow your mind to incline towards that. Because when you remember where happiness is to be found, then the mind will automatically incline in the right direction. No use of force, no use of power, just the use of wisdom, reminding yourself that it matters in life. And as you do this meditation, remember to see the beauty, the happiness, the tranquility in what you are doing here. And just feel how nice it is to let go of that whole world outside and focus instead on the internal peace, the internal stability of the mind. And just feel how delightful it is to let go of all the problems of the world. And as you do that, you will sometimes find that the breath arises in your mind's eye. It's as if the breath appears all by itself, is part of your experience. You're not really trying to focus on the breath. You're not trying very hard at all. The breath just happens to be there. Because it happens to be there, you cannot avoid focusing on it and noticing its presence. And that is really the ideal way of doing the breath meditation. It is not focusing on the breath, but noticing its presence, allowing the breath to come and go as it likes. And if you lose track of the breath, that's okay too. Later on, it comes back again all by itself. You don't do very much. All you do is notice these things. And if you do it in this way, it becomes so light, so easy, so delightful. And very quickly, the breath turns into something beautiful. And as you carry on in your meditation, sometimes you will feel tired, you will feel it will not have the energy of the mind that is required. And if that is the case, just go with the flow. Don't try to fight the tiredness, but allow the tiredness to be there. And eventually you will come out on the other side. And when you come out on the other side, the energy, it often comes back again as a consequence. If you fight the tiredness, you're making the mind even more tired. On the other hand, if you do gain some clarity of the mind, and if you find breath is coming into focus, then make sure that you bring some metta, some kindness to that perception of breath. And if you like, you can see your breath as a friend, as this marvelous friend that you walk along with, that takes you into even deeper states of meditation. So just have the sense of gratitude towards your breath, this breath that has supported you for so long, for so many years, for so many lifetimes, and is always there to support you. And now you are not only does it support you in ordinary life, but even now in meditation practice, have that sense of kindness there. Bring in the sense of a positive feeling here. And as you do that, it will take you even deeper on this marvelous path of meditation. And now, if you wish, we can take the meditation in a slightly different direction. One of the things to do, especially when we focus on the metta, is just to remind ourselves of all the goodness that exists in the world. We don't know so many people in this world. We don't know what they're up to, but we actually know behind the scenes that there is a lot of kindness, a lot of positive things happening. Just remind yourself of all of those good qualities, the kindness, the care, the generosity, the support that so many people in this world give. And perhaps just focus on all the people in one direction, say the northern direction, and all those people have a sense of gratitude. Thank all those people for being part of this world. Thank you for being here and making the world a brighter place. And now, if you like, you can bring your mind around to the eastern direction instead. And again, re-establish this idea of there being so much kindness in the world, sometimes invisible kindness that we're not really aware of. Also itself of all the deities, the devas that exist in this world, beings that have achieved what they have achieved through having beautiful qualities. You can imagine these beings of light, full of kindness, of care and generosity. And thank you, all those devas. Thank you for being part of this world and brightening up this place where we all exist together. And now you bring your mind around to the southern direction. And also remember down here, all the monks and the nuns at the monasteries down here, and all the monks and nuns around the world practice this path to the best of their ability. It is as if these monks and nuns, they represent the practice of Buddhism to its highest quality. What a marvelous thing it is to have people like this in the world who practice in this way. They are lay people and monastics. And again, thank you, all of those people, for being here, being part of this world, and helping brightening up this place where we all belong together. And now bring your mind around to the western, the last direction. And this time also bring in all the animals of the world. And the animals are so susceptible to suffering and problems. Bring of compassion also into the mix. Metta and compassion, they often need to go together. And in practice, it can be very hard to separate. All these beings in the world who have so much wonderful qualities, and yet there is suffering at the same time. To bring in this idea of compassion with the metta. May all the beings, may you be well, may you be happy. And now bring your attention very gently back to the breath again. And just stay with the breath for a few moments. And now we're coming towards the very end. Before we come to the end, just take a few moments to review your meditation. How do you feel now? And if you do feel a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more light-hearted, a little bit better than when you started out, and ask why that is the case. What are the perceptions that you have brought up? What are the things that you go? How does this process of meditation work? Okay, everyone. So that is the end of the meditation for now. So please come out. Hey, Freddie.
Hello. So this is the end of the morning session. Just a few reminders again. There is going to be an afternoon section, and self-meditation session will start at 1:30, and the actual Dhamma talk will start at 2:30 p.m. So if you want to meditate together, you can sign in at 1:30, or if you want to wait till the Q&A, you can sign in at 2:30. And please sign in 5 minutes earlier. So it will be like 2:25. And for questions, please go to the question form, and you can see in the chat box, Jean just post the form link again, or you can refer to the email we sent out earlier. Please don't post questions to Ajahn in the chat box, as it will be pushed away very soon by new messages. Just to remind you again that the meeting ID and password for the afternoon session is different from the morning session. So please check the email we sent out earlier, or you can see it in the chat box now. And that's it for the morning session. So see you again in the afternoon.
Hey, bye.
I will close the section now.